Sometimes it's about the journey, not necessarily the destination. And our journey to Alaska was taking us to many incredible places. We've found that traveling by RV is not only a comfortable way to visit some amazing destinations, but also has the benefit of allowing you to slow down and find adventure in the places in between.
So our first big adventure here in the Yukon is driving the Canol Road. We are here near Johnson's Crossing in the Yukon. We just filled up with diesel. We are ready to drive the 226 kilometers of this dirt road up to Ross River. The Canol Road was a road built shortly after the Alaska Highway during World War II when they were trying to exploit some of the oil fields up in northern Canada. Canol stands for Canadian oil. It was only in service for a number of years when a pipeline ran along this road, but it was decommissioned, and as the lady at the visitor center told me, now it's just a road through the bush.
Canol Road is also Yukon Highway 6, and although it has a highway designation, we heard it was far from what we were accustomed to as a highway. We arrived at the start of the road late in the day, so we made a pull out shortly up the road, our first stop, and stayed the night. The next morning, we woke to the sound of rain on the roof, exactly not what we had wanted to hear.
So we've been hanging out all morning, listening to the rain on the roof. It's kind of come and go a little bit, so we're trying to decide whether we continue down this road or not.
Yeah, we checked the weather for this couple of days for this drive, and it was supposed to be sunny and clear, and with a chance of rain like the day that we get off the road. So we figured we'd be good to go. And we woke up this morning and it pretty much poured for a couple of hours here.
We've been told that this road is really not advised in wet weather. We're not sure what that means, if that's like snow melt wet or a little bit of rain. So I say we go for it.
Yeah, and then just like if we run into something, we can turn back. The truck does have four-wheel drive, so.
Yeah. We're gonna finish our lunch and hit the road.
Going slow in the rain, the road started out in relatively good condition. A few rough patches here and there and some one-lane sections made things interesting, but nothing we were concerned with. This road has very little traffic and is kept open by the Yukon government for seasonal use and recreational purposes only, and not recommended for large RVs or vehicles without high clearance and four-wheel drive. We stopped at one such recreational spot along a river for lunch and to try a little fishing. The road had quite a few downed trees along the way that we had to clear, but luckily we didn't have to cut through more than a few inches as we only have a pruning saw and hatchet with us. As luck would have it, a couple miles further down the road we broke free of the weather and found sunshine and dry dirt. Around 90 kilometers into our drive, we came upon the beautiful and remote Quiet Lake. Quiet Lake has two developed campgrounds, one at the south end of the lake and one at the north. Neither had anyone in them, and we decided to stay a night at the north campground, which turned out to be very eventful.
So when we arrived at the Quiet Lake campground, it took us down a dirt 2-track that was really rough right along the edge of the lake. We got in and there was a boat ramp that went down into the water at the campground. It was a really nice spot. When we got there, we saw a porcupine wandering around on the boat ramp, and we didn't really think much of it other than we need to make sure to keep the dogs on leashes so that they don't get into it accidentally. We had a lovely time at the campground. We did a little bit of fishing, caught a really nice Arctic grayling that we fried up for dinner. And then we sat out by the lake and watched a magnificent sunset. We headed to bed. It was really late because the sun went down after midnight. And as we were just starting to drift off to sleep, we heard something strange coming from underneath the truck. There was some rattling and some squeaking, and we had to figure out what it was. So I got all garbed back up because the mosquitoes were terrible, and we headed outside and started poking around under the truck trying to figure out what the heck was going on. All right, critter, time to go. I think it might be under the truck. My God, it is inside the truck. It is like up inside the truck. And I couldn't see anything at first, but then we realized there was a full-size porcupine up underneath the truck chewing on everything. Oh, yeah, I see it. It's a porcupine. Come on, bud. Do not chew on the underside of the truck. Chewing on the hell's it chewing on? My gosh, it is all the way up under there. He's still chewing on something. We were not very happy about this because who knows what damage it was doing. So we started to make all kinds of racket. We were opening and closing doors. We started the truck. We start the truck. He's gonna destroy something. Okay, bud. Wow, he has huge claws.
Porky, get down.
All right, bud. Can't like that. Come on. Finally, it decided it didn't like this, so it crawled down out of the truck and we chased it off into the woods. Oh, good. All right. Hey, go on. Go on. Wow, they don't move very quick. We thought that was the end of it. We came back to the truck and we were looking around underneath it, trying to see, okay, what kind of damage did it do? And as we were looking around there, we heard that distinct sound of teeth. Whoa, is there another one up there? Did you hear that? Yeah. I think there's another one up there. Yep, there is.
Yeah, you're right.
We poked around a little more and found a second full-size porcupine up under the truck, sitting on the spare tire, chewing on everything still. Gosh, I hope they weren't chewing on like the airlines or anything. All right, I'm gonna poke at him. We went through the same process, making all kinds of noise, knocking on things. It's getting really late at night. We were opening and closing doors, and this thing would not leave. It just stayed up there, chewing on stuff, ignoring us. We finally had to get some sticks and start poking and prodding at the thing, trying to get it out. We basically had to pry this thing out from underneath the truck because it absolutely would not leave.
Hopefully after this experience, they won't want to come back.
Ouch!
He's right there. Look at that.
What?
Your stick.
Yeah, that's kind of insane. And now it's starting to rain. It took about a half hour to finally get this porcupine to fall out and chased it off into the woods. Come on, bud. Push him down, push him down. Yes, yes.
That way.
All right.
Go that way.
All right. Do not go back up in there. It was so late. It's probably around 3 in the morning at this point. We were tired, we were grumpy. We decided, oh, we'll just worry about whatever damage it did in the morning, and we went back to bed.
That was an experience. It started off as like oh, I hear something, isn't that funny? And it turned into oh shoot.
This is not fun. We crawled back in bed, and just as we were falling asleep again, we heard it. It was back, trying to get right under the truck again. We got out of bed and scared it off again, but we could not stay because they clearly were just gonna keep on coming back. There were quills everywhere. I didn't want to crawl under the truck there anyway, so we packed up and we drove a little ways up the road, and as we were driving out, Caitlin turned to me and said, "Hun, you're not gonna like this, but the check engine light's on." That's exactly what I feared would happen. I feared that they had chewed through some wires, and clearly they'd done some damage. So we drove up the road, but we didn't want to go very far, because if they'd chewed on the wires for the diesel exhaust system, the diesel particulate filter, we've heard horror stories of these trucks going into limp mode, meaning that it depowers the truck and prevents you from going very fast at all, and sometimes having to take them to the dealer to get them out of limp mode if something has gone wrong with the exhaust system. It was critical that the truck didn't go into limp mode because we were hundreds of kilometers from anything, and we hadn't even seen but 1 or 2 other cars on the road the entire time we were out there, so we did not want to push it. And we pulled off at the first pull off up the road, which was at a maintenance driveway, a maintenance facility for the road.
Well, I know we can't go far, but we probably can't do this while you're deliriously tired.
No, probably not. We woke up midday the next day, and I plugged in my OBD2 scanner that I always carry with me as we travel, and I checked, and sure enough there was a fault code, but because we didn't have any internet, I had no idea what it was. Crawling under the truck and looking over the exhaust system, sure enough we found wires that were chewed through for the diesel particulate filter and the oxygen sensors on the exhaust. Being so far from everything, we were so grateful that we had brought some tools along to get some things fixed. We had brought a soldering iron and some electrical repair equipment, which was great. We were able to plug the soldering iron right into the RV because with the battle-borne batteries and the inverter, we have power all the time, and we were able to fix the wires right there on the side of the road.
So here's our issue. The broken wires in this, I'm going to take this apart, and then this insulation's all chewed off, and some of these wires are partially chewed through. I think we could just tape those up, but it's crazy how many quills there are down here. Look at all those quills. It's crazy.
I got under there and soldered all the wires back together. We covered the wires in a liquid electrical tape, then some electrical tape, and then some aluminum tape for heat shielding. After we had the wires repaired, we got back in the truck. I got on my OBD2 scanner and I deleted the fault codes, which resets the check engine light. And then we basically restart the truck and see if the fault codes come back. They didn't, so we were good to go. We were expecting Canol Road to push our limits a little bit, but I'll say that porcupines were the last thing we expected to be a problem when we started off down this road.
With the truck repaired, we were able to roll on down the road once again. The road opened up to a large river valley winding through the Pelly Mountains alongside the Rose River, making us gape at the amazing scenery. The road still had many potholes, but we were content to drive the slow speeds required so that we could gawk at the new mountains and lakes that came into view. We stopped at one of the Lapey Lakes to do a little fishing and admire the snow-capped peaks from the water's edge. Shortly after this stop, things got a little bit more interesting as we slowly ascended away from the valley floor. The river dropped below us in increasingly dramatic views. This was fine until we hit a bit of wet, slippery, clay-like mud left over from some prior weather. This mud caked to our tires, virtually eliminating our traction. We were very thankful for the four-wheel drive of the truck and even popped it into 4-low to tackle some particularly daunting hills that the truck just barely made it up.
That's a little bit freaky, I will say.
We only had one incident where we slid with a sickening helplessness towards the edge of the cliff, having to accelerate and steer into the road to prevent the slide. This was extremely stressful, and from this experience, we cannot recommend this road to anyone if it has been raining even the slightest.
Get off this slippery, muddy cliff face.
Fortunately, the drive dried out shortly after this, and we proceeded down the Lepi River Valley and across the one-lane bridge over the beautiful Lepi River Canyon. One final steep, one-lane rocky cliffside climb and we were home free and happily turned onto the Campbell Highway a few miles south of Ross River.
We made it!
We made it. Oh.
I feel like there should be a sign here that says, "Congratulations, you just drove the Canol Road."
Yeah.
Ah.
While it is a dirt highway, compared to the Canol, it felt like the smoothest road in the whole world. Overall, we were extremely grateful for the four-wheel drive capability and the Hellway suspension that kept us in control and comfortable on this rough road. We were also very impressed with the performance of the Lance truck camper on this first real back road excursion. The next leg of our drive would take us up the Campbell Highway to the intersection with the Klondike Highway that we would follow until we reached Dawson City, where the Top of the World Highway would take us to the Alaska border. Before reaching the Klondike Highway, we stopped briefly in the little town of Faro. At one point, Faro had the world's largest open-pit lead and zinc mine and supplied huge quantities of lead for batteries. On display at the entrance to the town, they have one of their 65-ton ore-hauling dump trucks that were some of the very first trucks of this size for operation at the mine.
Reminds me of my dad's old tractor.
Driving a truck, a big old truck.
The mine shut down in 1998, and the site is now one of the most complex cleanup sites in Canada due to the lead that has made the area so toxic. After learning this, it made us appreciate our lithium batteries even more, which use materials that are non-toxic and in much smaller quantities. With a little bit of time, hopefully society's dependence on lead for batteries will disappear altogether for an environmentally healthier future. We followed the Campbell Highway to its intersection with the Klondike Highway near Carmacks, Yukon. We then headed north, following both the Yukon and Klondike rivers for a time before arriving to these rivers' confluence in Dawson City. As we drove this historic section of road, we stopped to see the sights and read the information plaques. The Yukon River is the longest river in the Yukon and Alaska, and was a major transportation route during the Klondike Gold Rush at the end of the 19th century. This gold rush brought an estimated 100,000 prospectors to the region, which displaced many First Nation peoples who called the area home for centuries and left scars on the land and watersheds that are still plainly visible today. As we reached Dawson City, mine tailings from the great dredges of the past greeted us near the east entrance of town, and the legacy architecture of the buildings was reminiscent of times gone by. We spent a night in a campground outside the town. We had learned Yukon campgrounds often provide firewood, so we had our first campfire of the trip. At this point in our trip, we felt like we had fully settled into this truck camper lifestyle. We were putting many miles on each day and had developed a routine of getting up in the morning, reconfiguring our storage baskets from the seating area to the bed, and putting several hours into our workday before hitting the road in the afternoon. Most days we drive without a set destination, enjoying hikes, scenery, or adventures as they happen, and settle in when we get tired, wherever we might be. We stopped only briefly in downtown Dawson City for a bite to eat at a local bakery, and then to get some fuel, as we would be back through this way to drive the Dempster Highway and to explore the town later in the summer. Leaving Dawson City to the west required our first ferry crossing of the journey. This ferry is free to use and open during the summer months. It connects Dawson City to the top of the World Highway. Only a few minutes into the drive, we realized why the road is named as such. Unlike other highways that wind through the valleys and along the sides of mountains, the engineers of this road decided to build it right on top. The 127-kilometer, 79-mile highway goes from Dawson City to the Canada-Alaska border. The view was absolutely breathtaking the entire way, and the road turned out to be in excellent shape and an easy drive.
This has been an amazing drive. We're literally on top of a mountain range, so as you might expect, the views are incredible.
We crossed into Alaska at one of the most interesting and remote border crossings, Poker Creek, Alaska. There is a cabin that was built there in the 70s for Border Patrol officers to live in. Up until then, the U.S. did their crossing inspections in Tok, Alaska, about 100 miles away.
Back in the USA!
Well, that was easy.
It went very smoothly, very nice patrol officer, and we had no issues. We got the green light to go into Alaska.
We are in Alaska.
We are in Alaska!
This is Alaska. Look at that. Miles again.
From the border crossing, the highway connects with the Taylor Highway to wind down out of the mountains and reconnect with the Alaska Highway in Tok. Once at Tok, we took a turn south down the Tok Cutoff Road to the Richardson Highway, where we finally made it to the start of the Denali Highway in Paxson. The first section of road in Alaska is a very smooth paved road, until it intersects with the Taylor Highway. This piece of road became narrow and dirt without much gravel. It descends on a cliffside and makes a few hairpin turns. This road also gets very slippery when wet, and we came across a very unfortunate Class A motorhome that had slid off the road in wet conditions and was in the process of being recovered. We were going very slow and white-knuckling sections of this road. Once past Chicken, Alaska, the road became paved and while no longer slippery, had some extreme frost heaves and our progress was still slow. After so many back roads, intersecting with the Alaska Highway felt like driving onto a major interstate. We followed this to Tok, where we reprovisioned for the next leg of our drive. We found prices here to be quite reasonable and found everything that we needed from propane to laundry to fishing licenses. The Tok cutoff took us south to where we turned north onto the Richardson Highway.
We are getting onto the Glen Highway, the Tok cutoff of the Glen Highway. We are heading down to Gakona, where we are going to head north to Paxson. This road, if we kept going on it instead of turning north to Paxson, would take us right to Anchorage.
These roads, although paved, sometimes had terrible frost heaves that had a tendency to sneak up on us and slow our progress to a crawl. Fortunately, the scenery was spectacular and we were in no rush. driving up the Richardson Highway, the Alaska mountain range came into view as we excitedly made our turn down the old Denali Highway that would deliver us to our first destination in Alaska, Denali National Park. After our experience on Canol Road, we felt like our world had opened up in where we could go and still have the comforts of running water, a toilet, full kitchen, furnace, and electricity. We were also excited about our newfound confidence in taking the rig down rough, remote roads. We could hardly wait to discover what adventures Alaska had in store for us.